Shadows in the boardroom, Priya. Sharma's fingers flew across her keyboard, the numbers on her screen speaking a language few at Vertex Global understood as fluently as she did. It was nearly 8 in the evening, and the 43rd floor had emptied, hours ago, leaving only the ambient hum of air conditioning and the occasional ping of her incoming emails. Just finishing the Henderson projection models, she murmured to herself, adjusting her simple black-framed glasses. The quarterly report was due tomorrow, but she knew from experience that giving herself this extra time meant catching the small details others missed. Priya wasn't technically required to stay late. As a senior financial analyst, she had completed her assigned portions days ago. But the team's presentation still had holes, the same holes she had pointed out in last week's meeting when Vikram, her department head, had smiled politely and moved on without addressing her concerns. A text notification lit up her phone. Zara, her roommate. Still at work? You know they don't pay you enough for these hours. Priya smiled faintly. Zara never understood why she pushed herself so hard for a company that seemed determined to overlook her contributions. The sound of voices drifted from the hallway. Priya glanced up, surprised anyone else would be here this late. Through the glass walls of her cubicle partition, she saw them. Rohan Malhotra, the 34-year-old founder and CEO of Vertex Global, walking alongside Vikram and 2 board members. Rohan had the easy confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. Tall, with warm brown skin and perpetually tousled black hair, he had been on the cover of Business Today twice this year alone. The media loved his story. The college dropout who built a tech empire focused on sustainable energy solutions, now worth billions. We'll need those projections completely redone before the investor meeting, Rohan was saying, his voice carrying that distinctive blend of authority and casual ease. The Henderson deal is pivotal. Absolutely, Vikram nodded eagerly. My team is all over it. I've got our best people working through the night. Priya suppressed a sigh. By best people, Vikram meant himself taking credit for her work. Again, they were about to pass her cubicle when Rohan glanced in. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Priya saw the flicker of confusion in his expression, the look of someone trying to place a familiar face. Good evening, he said with a professional nod. Good evening, Mr. Malhotra, she replied quietly. As they continued down the hallway, she heard one of the board members ask, "Who was that?" "Oh, just one of our analysts," Vikram answered dismissively. "Quite thorough with the numbers. Parvati or Pooja, something like that." "Priya," she whispered to her screen, knowing they couldn't hear. "It's Priya." She'd been at Vertex for 3 years, had spoken in at least 5 meetings Rohan himself had attended, had authored reports that bore his signature. Yet she remained a shadow, a nameless face behind the data that drove his empire. Turning back to her screen, Priya opened the Henderson files. The acquisition numbers didn't add up. There was a serious liability the team had overlooked. She'd tried to raise the issue twice in meetings, but Vikram had smoothly talked over her, eager to push the deal forward. She began drafting a detailed analysis, knowing it would likely be ignored or, worse, appropriated without credit. But she couldn't bring herself to stay silent when she saw a problem this significant. "What's the point?" she muttered, saving the document. Her phone buzzed again. Zara. "Annual company Gala invites just hit our inbox. You're going this year. No excuses. I will physically drag you if necessary." Priya groaned. The thought of an evening making painful small talk in uncomfortable clothes while being further ignored by colleagues who barely remembered her name seemed like perfect torture. Hard. "Pass," she typed back. "Too busy being invisible." The invitation, absolutely not. Priya stood in their apartment's living room, arms crossed firmly over her chest. "I've attended exactly 1 company gala in 3 years, and I spent the entire evening explaining to drunk executives who I was and why I was there." Zara Kapoor, her roommate since college, and now a successful fashion stylist, dramatically flopped onto their sofa. "That's precisely why you need to go this time. You can't keep hiding in spreadsheets forever, Pry." "I'm not hiding," Priya protested, gathering her long dark hair into its usual practical bun. "I'm focusing on what matters. My work speaks for itself." "Does it, though?" Zara challenged, sitting up. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like everyone else is speaking for your work, taking credit while you vanish into the background." The truth in Zara's words stung more than Priya wanted to admit. Just yesterday, she had watched silently as Vikram presented her Henderson analysis to the executive team, with a few crucial modifications that downplayed the risks she had identified. When she tried to interject, Rohan had glanced at her with that same vague recognition before Vikram smoothly redirected the conversation. "The gala is in 3 weeks," Zara continued, her voice softening. "I have a client who's a designer, and she owes me a favor. Let me help you step into the light. For once." "What's the point?" Priya sighed, sinking into the armchair opposite. "Putting me in fancy clothes won't suddenly make people value my opinions." "No, but it might make them see you, actually see you," Zara insisted. "You're brilliant, Priya. You're also beautiful, kind, and witty when you're not overthinking everything. But you've convinced yourself that being taken seriously means fading into invisibility." Priya stared at her hands, considering. She'd always believed that in the corporate world, especially for women, being noticed for your appearance was a distraction from being valued for your mind. Her simple blouses and sensible slacks were a conscious choice, armor against being, judged for anything but her intellect. "This isn't about finding you a man or making you into someone you're not," Zara said, reading her thoughts. "It's about claiming your space, demanding to be seen." Later that week, Priya sat in a sleek downtown cafe during her lunch break, absently stirring her chai latte. Her laptop displayed the company-wide email about the upcoming gala celebrating Vertex Global's 10th anniversary. The event would be held at the Grand Horizon Hotel, with proceeds benefiting educational initiatives for underprivileged children, a cause Rohan Malhotra championed personally. "Mind if I join you?" Priya looked up, startled to find Devika Rao, the company's head of legal, standing beside her table. Devika was one of the few women in Vertex's upper management, brilliant, intimidating, and surprisingly, someone who had always acknowledged Priya's contributions. "Please," Priya gestured to the empty chair. Devika sat, setting down her coffee. "I read your note on the Henderson acquisition, the one you sent directly to my department." Priya felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sorry if that was out of line. I just thought legal should be aware of the potential issues with their environmental compliance history." "Out of line? You potentially saved us from a regulatory nightmare," Devika said, leaning forward. "I brought it up with Rohan this morning. He wants to know why this information wasn't included in the formal assessment." "Oh." Priya's mind raced. Vikram thought the concerns were overstated. Devika's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "Did he now? Interesting, since the EPA's preliminary findings support your analysis exactly." She took a sip of her coffee. "Rohan has asked to meet with whoever caught this oversight. That would be you." Priya's heart hammered. A direct meeting with the CEO was both thrilling and terrifying. "When?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Devika replied, standing. "And Priya? I noticed you haven't RSVP'd to the gala. You should come. It's time more. People around here knew exactly who you are." As Devika walked away, Priya's phone lit up with a text from Zara. "Designer appointment confirmed for Saturday. No backing out now." With trembling fingers, Priya opened the gala invitation and clicked accept. Starlight and strategies. The Grand Horizon Hotel's ballroom shimmered with thousands of tiny lights that mimicked a night sky, casting a soft glow over the elegant crowd. Priya stood just inside the entrance, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain others could hear it over the string quartet's gentle melody. "Stop fidgeting," Zara whispered beside her. "You look incredible." Priya smoothed her hands over the midnight blue gown her friend had insisted on. The silk cascaded like water, embellished with subtle crystal beading that caught the light with every movement. Her usually restrained hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and the minimal makeup Zara had applied somehow made her eyes look larger, more luminous. "I feel like I'm in costume," Priya murmured. "That's just because you're used to your boring office uniform," Zara replied, adjusting her own crimson dress. "This is still you, just a you that's not afraid to be noticed." As they moved further into the room, Priya felt the weight of unexpected attention. Colleagues who normally brushed past her desk without a glance now did double takes. Vikram actually stopped mid-sentence when he saw her, momentarily forgetting the board member he'd been chatting with. "Priya? Priya Sharma?" He approached, his surprise poorly concealed. "I almost didn't recognize you." "Hello, Vikram," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Beautiful event, isn't it?" "Indeed." "You should dress up more often," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's good for company morale." Before she could respond to the thinly veiled condescension, Devika appeared at her side. "Priya, perfect timing. There's someone who's been asking about you." She gave Vikram a dismissive nod. "If you'll excuse us." As Devika led her through the crowd, Priya whispered, "Thank you for the rescue." "Men like Vikram get nervous when they realize they've underestimated someone," Devika replied with a knowing smile. "Especially when that someone looks like you. Do tonight." They approached a small group near the windows where Rohan Malhotra stood in animated conversation. The formal black tuxedo accentuated his lean frame, and unlike many of the other executives who seemed uncomfortable in their finery, he wore it with natural ease. When he turned and saw her, something shifted in his expression. Surprise, followed by genuine curiosity. "Mr. Malhotra," Devika said, "you remember Priya Sharma, our financial analyst who identified the Henderson compliance issues?" "Of course," he replied, though they both knew he hadn't really remembered her before their meeting 2 weeks ago. "Your insight saved us from a potentially disastrous acquisition." He extended his hand. "And please, it's Rohan." His handshake was firm, his gaze direct, in a way it had never been during their brief professional interactions. "Would you mind if I borrowed you for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss." Heart racing, Priya followed him to a quieter corner of the ballroom. "Is everything all right with the Henderson analysis?" "The analysis is perfect," he assured her. "That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. After our meeting, I reviewed some of your previous work, the quarterly projections, the sustainability metrics for the Jakarta project." Priya's breath caught. "You did?" "I did," he nodded, studying her with newfound interest. "What I can't figure out is why someone with your level of insight is buried in middle management, and why I've never properly noticed your contributions before." The honesty of his statement was both validating and painful. "I'm not particularly good at drawing attention to myself," she admitted. "And yet, here you are tonight," he gestured to her transformation, "commanding the attention of everyone in the room." "The dress is just a dress," she said quietly. "I'm still the same person who's been sending those reports for 3 years. Something changed in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition of the subtle challenge in her words. Before he could respond, they were interrupted by the chairman of the board, pulling Rohan away for an introduction to a potential investor. "We're not finished with this conversation," Rohan told her, an unexpected warmth in his voice. "Save me a dance?" Hours later, after that promised dance had turned into 2, Priya found herself on the hotel's terrace, discussing Vertex's newest renewable energy project with Rohan and several senior executives. When the conversation turned to expansion into Southeast Asian markets, she hesitated, then offered an observation about regulatory patterns she'd noticed while researching the region. The group fell silent, considering her point. Then Rohan smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his normally serious face. "That's exactly the kind of insight we've been missing," he said. "Priya, I want you to join the strategy team for this initiative. Starting Monday." As the night air carried the sounds of music and laughter from inside, Priya realized that for the first time in her career, she truly had been heard. Beyond reflections, morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive floor, a stark contrast to Priya's former workspace 43 stories below. 3 weeks had passed since the gala, and her professional life had transformed with dizzying speed. Rohan had been true to his word. Not only had Priya joined the Southeast Asia strategy team, but she now reported directly to him as a special advisor on financial risk assessment. Her new office, an actual office with a door, not a cubicle, sat just down the hall from his, the gay. "Henderson report again?" asked Javier, Rohan's chief of staff, popping his head through her doorway. Priya nodded, gesturing to the documents spread across her desk. "Just making sure we've covered every angle before the board presentation." Rohan's "Confidence in you is already legendary," Javier remarked. "Never seen him trust someone's judgment so quickly." That was the part Priya still struggled to reconcile. The sudden visibility, the respect, the way Rohan now sought her opinion in meetings. It all felt connected to that night, to that dress, to a version of herself she wasn't entirely comfortable claiming. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rohan. "Coffee on the roof garden in 15? Need your thoughts on something." These impromptu meetings had become routine, yet each one still sent a flutter of nervous energy through her chest, not just because he was her boss or because of his undeniable charisma, but because of the growing complexity of their interactions. The roof garden was Rohan's private retreat, a lush, carefully cultivated space 20 stories above the city's bustle. When Priya arrived, he was standing by the railing, gazing out at the skyline, 2 coffee cups waiting on the small table beside him. "Perfect timing," he said, turning with a smile that seemed reserved just for these moments. "1 almond milk. Latte extra shot." "You remembered my coffee order?" she asked, accepting the cup. "I remember everything about you, Priya," he replied, his tone casual yet weighted with meaning. "Including how you take apart complex problems with remarkable precision." He gestured for her to sit, then pulled out a tablet displaying projections for their newest venture, clean energy storage solutions that could revolutionize power access in developing regions. "The engineering team says it's ready for market testing, but something feels off about the implementation timeline," he explained. "I need your honest assessment." For the next hour, they dissected the project from every angle. Priya identified potential supply chain vulnerabilities that could derail their deadlines, while Rohan challenged her assumptions with questions that pushed her thinking further. This was what she loved, this intellectual partnership that had developed between them. In these moments, she knew he valued her mind, her insight. Yet doubt still lingered at the edges of her consciousness. "Would we be having this conversation if we'd never met at the gala?" she asked suddenly, interrupting their discussion about manufacturing costs. Rohan looked up, surprised by the change in topic. "What do you mean?" "I mean, would you have discovered my remarkable precision if I'd remained just another analyst in a cubicle?" The question had been building inside her for weeks. He set down his tablet, giving her his full attention. "That's a fair question. Is it the work you value or the packaging it came in that night?" she pressed, unable to stop now that she'd begun. "Because I was doing the same quality work for years, Rohan. Nobody noticed until I put on a fancy dress." "You're right," he admitted after a long moment. "And that's on me, on this company's culture. I should have seen you sooner." His honesty disarmed her. Then why didn't you? Because people like me get comfortable in our assumptions, he said, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she'd come to recognize as frustration with himself. We think we're seeing everything clearly, but we're not. We see what we expect to see. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them, an acknowledgement of the shifting ground beneath their professional relationship. The gala may have made me notice you, Priya, he continued, his voice softening. But it's who you are every day since that has made me unable to look away. Before she could respond, his phone rang, the board chairman, requiring his immediate attention. As Rohan left, promising to continue their conversation later, Priya remained in the garden, wondering if it was possible to be truly seen for all. That she was, not just her mind or her appearance, but the complex whole of her being. The truth in plain sight. The quarterly board meeting had gone exceptionally well. Priya's presentation on risk mitigation had received unanimous approval, and even Vikram had begrudgingly acknowledged the strength of her strategy. As executives filed out of the conference room, congratulating her, she felt a moment of pure professional satisfaction. That feeling lasted precisely until she overheard two board members talking just outside the door. Malhotra's new pet project seems to be working out, one said in a low voice. Pretty convenient how she suddenly became indispensable after that gala, the other replied with a knowing chuckle. Though I suppose there are worse ways to climb the corporate ladder. Priya froze, the implication hitting her like a physical blow. Is that what people thought? That her rapid rise was because of some romantic entanglement with Rohan, not because of her abilities? She gathered her materials with trembling hands, avoiding eye contact with the remaining executives. All the insecurities she'd been fighting rushed back, amplified by the casual cruelty of the comments. Priya? Rohan appeared in the doorway, his expression concerned. We're supposed to meet about the Jakarta revisions. Is everything okay? I need to reschedule, she said stiffly, brushing past him. Something urgent came up. For the next week, Priya retreated into formality, keeping their interactions strictly professional. She arrived early, left late, and buried herself in work, reverting to old patterns that felt safer than the vulnerability of their recent connection. Rohan noticed, of course. His confused glances turned to concern, then to a careful distance that matched her own. The easy rapport they'd developed grew strained, weighted with unspoken questions. On Friday evening, Priya was working late, deliberately, to avoid the team dinner Rohan had organized, when Devika appeared at her office door. This has to stop, she announced without preamble. Priya looked up from her screen. What does? Whatever is happening between you and Rohan, Devika replied, closing the door behind her. The entire executive floor feels like a pressure cooker. Nothing is happening, Priya insisted. I'm just focusing on my work. Which is exactly the problem. Devika sat down across from her. You're retreating, and he's miserable, and neither of you is addressing why. Priya's professional composure cracked. I heard what they're saying about me, about us, that I'm his pet project, that I didn't earn this position. And you believed them? Devika's voice was sharp with disappointment. After everything you've accomplished? It doesn't matter what I believe, Priya countered. Perception becomes reality in this world. I spent years trying to be valued for my mind, and now I'm just the woman who caught the CEO's eye at a party. Do you know why Rohan really noticed you at the gala? Devika asked. Priya shook her head. Because for the first time, you weren't hiding, Devika said simply. Yes, you looked beautiful, but more importantly, you finally allowed yourself to take up space, to speak without apologizing, to believe you belonged there. The truth of Devika's words resonated painfully. Priya had always attributed her invisibility to others' oversight, never considering how much of it was self-imposed. "What do I do now?" she whispered. "That depends." Devika stood to leave. "On whether you want to keep hiding or finally let yourself be seen, completely seen. He's in his office, by the way. Has been every night this week." An hour later, after wrestling with her pride and fear, Priya knocked on Rohan's office door. He looked up, surprise and cautious hope crossing his features when he saw her. "May I come in?" she asked. He nodded, setting aside the reports he'd been reviewing. Priya took a deep breath. "I've been unfair to you, and to myself." "What happened?" he asked quietly. "One day we were connecting, and the next you could barely look at me. I overheard some comments," she admitted, "about why I was promoted. About us." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by anger. "Who said it? It doesn't matter," she interrupted. "What matters is that I let it affect me because part of me believed it might be true, that perhaps you only valued me because of how I looked that night, not because of what I can do." Rohan stood, moving around his desk to face her directly. "Priya, I promoted you because you're brilliant, because this company needs your insight, because I've never met anyone who sees through complexity the way you do." "Then why didn't you see me before?" The question contained all her vulnerability, all her doubt. "Because I wasn't really looking," he answered honestly. "The Gala didn't make you visible, Priya. It made me pay attention. There's a difference." He took a step closer. "I'm not interested in who you pretended to be that night, or who you pretend to be in this office. I'm interested in all of you. The analyst who stays late because she cares about getting things right. The woman who challenges my thinking and makes me better. The person who's been hiding parts of herself because she thought that was the only way to be valued." "And what if those parts don't match what you're expecting?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then I'll consider myself lucky to discover them," he replied, the sincerity in his eyes impossible to doubt. In that moment, standing in the office where she'd finally claimed her rightful place, Priya realized that being seen, truly seen, wasn't about dresses or presentations or titles. It was about having the courage to show up fully, to stop diminishing herself in fear of others' judgments. "I'd like to start over," she said, extending her hand with new confidence. "I'm Priya Sharma, financial strategist, occasional overthinker, and absolutely not interested in being anyone's pet project." Rohan laughed, taking her hand in his. "Rohan Malhotra, CEO with imperfect vision, learning to see what's been in front of him all along." As their hands remained linked, something new and honest unfolded between them. A connection based not on appearances or positions, but on the recognition of what had always been there, waiting to be discovered. The truth, it seemed, had been in plain sight all along.